Listen-only mode.
Hi everyone, thanks for attending. I am Courtney Corda, and I'm going to introduce myself at least twice while we wait for some people additional attendees to join us. Let me get started by saying that you should look at the tech support numbers that are on the welcome screen there and make a note of those in case you have any technical difficulties during the webinar. I've been a part of the Science Buddies organization since 2002, and I'm delighted to be here today to give you a guided tour of our website, which has grown in leaps and bounds over the years and now comprises about 15,000 pages of resources and tools. I have a couple of my colleagues who are working behind the scenes here to produce this webinar, including Marissa Montalvo, Claire Hubbard, Peggy Tierney, and Ugo Paz. So today we have hundreds of educators who have registered for this webinar, including some from as far away as the Philippines and New Zealand. So I want to give a special welcome to those of you who might be attending in the middle of the night in your time zone. I'm going to go through that one more time in deference to the people that may be doing their first webinar and need an extra minute to get logged on. Again, thank you for coming. Today is welcome to Using Science Buddies for Success. I'm Courtney Corda, and I've been a part of the Science Buddies organization since 2002. I'm very happy to be here today to guide you through our website, which has grown in leaps and bounds over the years and currently has about 15,000 pages of resources and tools. I've got some colleagues here who are working behind the scenes to produce this webinar: Marissa Montalvo, Claire Hubbard, Peggy Tierney, and Ugo Paz. We have several hundred registered educators for this webinar, including some from as far away as the Philippines and New Zealand, so I wanted to just give a special welcome to those of you who are possibly attending this webinar in the middle of the night, your time. All right, with that, one last mention of the tech support numbers that are posted in the blue Science Buddies welcome screen. If you have any trouble, please call GoToWebinar's Global Customer Support at those numbers. This webinar is sponsored by AMD Changing the Game, which is an initiative of the AMD Foundation. Thank you very much, AMD. I also want to thank Citrix Systems, who donated the GoToWebinar software that we're using to broadcast this webinar and is hosting us physically today for the broadcast. I also want to remind you that all the attendees who stay for our full webinar today and then answer a brief survey at the end of the webinar will be entered into a drawing to win one of 3 external hard drives, Mac or PC, donated by Western Digital. Thank you, Western Digital, for providing these virtual door prizes. All of our attendees are muted, so that means that we can't hear you. You can only hear me. We will be having a question and answer session at the end of the tour. You can type your question in the question pane in your GoToWebinar control panel. We may be able to answer some questions in writing before the Q&A session begins, so go ahead and type your question whenever you have it. All of the resources and tools on the Science Buddies website are free to use. We are a 501c3 public charity, and we are primarily supported by donations from companies, foundations, and individual citizens. Our mission is to help students from all walks of life build their literacy in science and technology so they can become productive and engaged citizens in the 21st century. All right, with that, we're going to go on to the beginning of our tour. I'm going to start with our home page. As you can see, across the top of our site are colorful tabs that demarcate the major resources that we have to offer. Most of our resources are designed to help K-12 students and teachers who are doing hands-on science projects, such as for science fairs. We have resources for students, teachers, and parents, as well as science fair administrators. Most of our resources are designed to improve project quality and guide you and your students to a successful science fair experience. Science Buddies is recommended by many partners and advocates. For example, the Scilinks program of the National Science Teachers Association. This year, we were very proud when the journal Science gave us their Science Prize for online resources in education. With that, I'm going to go introduce you to the first of many tools today. one of our best, the Topic Selection Wizard. The Topic Selection Wizard helps students with what is considered to be one of the trickiest parts of doing a science fair project. Sometimes it's a little counterintuitive to think that picking the topic would be the hardest part of doing a science fair project. You might think analyzing the data, setting up the experiment, doing the background research would be the toughest parts, but we've heard from so many students and teachers over the years that really picking the topic is the toughest part. So we developed many years ago the Topic Selection Wizard tool to help students answer plain English questions and narrow down what fields of science and engineering and what specific topics would really truly suit their interests. The way that the Topic Selection Wizard can be very helpful to students in your classrooms is that I'm sure you have some students who may be a little reluctant to do a science fair project, and they say, well, I'm not into science, or I don't like science. The great thing about the Topic Selection Wizard is that it can lead them to project ideas that connect to things they do like, such as cooking or music or sports. What happens first is you fill out this form here, which asks the student to share when their project is due and any requirements that their teacher may have about the topics that they're allowed to choose. Then students have the option to give us some demographic information. We do not use the demographic information as a factor in making project idea suggestions. However, this is a convenient place for science buddies to gather important information about the demographic makeup of the audience we serve. Once this preliminary questionnaire has been filled out, the student will then get to the science interest survey, which you can see here. Over 1 million students have taken this survey over the years, and we've been able to make improvements on a regular basis to the algorithm that matches project ideas in our project idea library to the interests of individual students. I think there's about something like 20 questions in the survey. I hope you all take it yourself and answer the questions, truly. Don't try to pretend to be a kid. Just and see what you think about how accurate it is in predicting your interests, even as an adult. It's very good at predicting which projects will be most interesting to any given student, and we often hear that students work harder, have more fun, and get more deeply engaged when the topic truly interests them. Most of the questions are pretty, presented in plain English, things like, do you like to watch nature programs on television? Are you interested in how to build roads and bridges? There are lots of students who have really no idea what engineering is, but when you ask them if they're interested in building things, they can answer that question. As an example, let's see, I'm going to click submit on this questionnaire I've already filled out so you can see what the recommendation page looks like. So here we have my recommendations based on the answers that I just gave to the survey. The Topic Selection Wizard, which I may refer to as the TSW shorthand, has narrowed down a list of project ideas that's a reasonable number for browsing. As I look through them, I can save the ones that I want to look at more by clicking on the My Favorites button, which when I click on any one of these projects in the list of recommendations, there is an Add to Favorites icon in the upper right that I can click, and that will be added to my favorites. I'll tell you how to access the favorites in a few minutes. We have a library of over 1,000 project ideas covering difficulty levels from kindergarten through 12th grade, and they cover more than 30 different areas of science. Our project ideas are authored by our staff scientists, sometimes with help from outside experts. For example, we've worked with astronomers from UC Santa Cruz to come up with some cool ideas in the astronomy area, chemistry experts at MIT. We had help from the scientists at one of our corporate partners, Biorad Laboratories, to develop a project idea for size exclusion chromatography. There's just so many different ones. It's even hard to highlight the breadth of the project ideas that we offer. I also wanted to mention that a student can email a project idea to their parent or their teacher or to a friend if they find one they like and they want to share and get feedback on it by clicking on the email this icon. I wish I had time to go through some of the awesome project ideas that we have. I'll just mention a couple. I hope that you all will look through the project idea library and try the topic selection wizard yourself. We have everything from exploring the roles of color and sugar content in hummingbirds' food preferences to DNA fingerprinting and forensics, the science of making cheese, the physics of skateboarding. We really try to come up with project ideas so that no matter where a student's interests lie, they'll be able to find a project idea that can get them excited about their science fair project or their science project assignment. I want to mention that there are two kinds of project ideas. There's full project ideas and there are abbreviated project ideas. I'm going to first show you a full project idea. We're going to look at no pain, lots of game. And this is a project idea that has to do with video games, and it's about how video games may play a role in reducing the sensation of pain. Like all of our full project ideas, a project idea starts at the top. They all follow a similar format. They start with an abstract, followed by an objective, an introduction, and then terms, concepts, and questions to start background research, some suggested questions to get kids thinking about what their hypothesis might be, a bibliography, a list of materials and equipment, suggestions for the experimental procedure, which sometimes can be fairly detailed, variations, credits, and finally a career focus section which relates the project idea to careers that are relevant. Another important feature of project ideas is this gray sidebar, the summary area, where we can tell at a glance what is the difficulty level of the project idea, the time required, prerequisites, how easy it is to obtain materials, the cost, and any safety considerations that should be highlighted. The level of detail in the procedure section varies according to a number of factors such as safety, and then in some areas like for example genetics and genomics or astronomy, we allow students to take advantage of online databases of information compiled by professional students. Without these procedures, students would be unable to tackle the project, so we give a lot more detail in some instances. In other areas such as electricity and electronics, students might need to build something in order to complete the experiment, and therefore they require some detailed instructions. For teachers who want their students to write their own procedures completely from scratch, there are two options. About 30% of our project ideas are what we call abbreviated project ideas. Abbreviated project ideas are marked in the project idea indices with an asterisk. So I'll find you one here that we can look at. Let's see. Here's one. Can gaming help you score better in school? The asterisk tells you that it's an abbreviated project idea. Abbreviated project ideas give you an abstract and a bibliography to help the student get started with their research. Also, nearly all of our project ideas, the full project ideas, include variations at the bottom, which will allow students to maybe come up with their own variation on a project idea, and that will force them to write their own procedures. So those are two options that teachers can use to have kids do a little bit more of a unique project if that's something that's important to a teacher. Okay, moving on to interest areas. If students already know what fields are interesting to them, they don't have to use the topic selection wizard. They can browse project ideas by what we call interest areas. we can access the interest area index by clicking on the Project Idea tab. Interest areas are collections of similarly themed project ideas. There are about 30 different interest areas, and they're divided into 7 different categories. You can see them all here. One of our newest and most creative interest areas is our video and computer games interest area. I'm going to use this as a sample interest area to guide you through. The AMD Foundation wanted to do something to help students build their science and technology literacy, and they came up with the Changing the Game initiative, which gives grants to nonprofits like Science Buddies that spark students' interest in STEM by getting them involved in video and computer game creation. They helped us build this video and computer games interest area so that the millions of students each year who do science fair projects could develop legitimate science fair projects with topics related to game design. Thanks to AMD, we've been regularly adding new materials to this interest area, and today we have a pretty big assortment of project ideas and tutorials to help students and teachers. The typical interest area has a home page or a landing page, which we're looking at right now, where at the top there's an overview of the themes or topics that are, or concepts that are covered by the project ideas in the area. In this particular interest area, video and computer games, we know that kids like to play video games, but what about making video games? What goes into making video games? What are what's the science and engineering behind that? Some of the things that are explored, some of the concepts that are explored are game design, computer graphics, computer audio, game programming, and then the usefulness and impact of games. So studying human behavior during gameplay, the effects of social or educational content in games, the usefulness of simulations in training and experimentation, and even ergonomics. So that is the purpose of the area. A typical interest area also has a related links section where different guides and tutorials that relate to that particular topic can be found. And then finally, you'll look at a table of contents or a list of all of the project ideas, both abbreviated and full, that make up the interest area. They are sorted by difficulty level. And I know there's probably going to be somebody out there wondering about the difficulty levels. I'll talk about that in a second too. In fact, I'll just talk about it now so I don't forget. Difficulty levels. Whenever you click on any project idea, you can click on the difficulty, the word difficulty, and it will give you a little bit of an explanation about how we mark projects as, you know, what level they are. Schools differ. Obviously, what somebody's covering in second grade in Ohio might be a little bit different than what somebody's covering in second grade in Texas, and you know, from country to country there are differences as well. So we don't make a strict we don't strictly relate our difficulty levels to a grade, but as a general rule, projects that we rate as difficulty level 1 through 4 are elementary school appropriate. 4 through 8 would be, or 4 through 7 would be grades 6 through 8, and then 6 through 10 would be grades 9 through 12. So you kind of just have to get a sense for what is right for your students in your particular situation, but that's how we rate them. I want to go back to our interest area homepage for video and computer games project ideas. I think these guides that we have here and all the different project ideas that compose the video and computer games area illustrate an important point about Science Buddies. Our content is curated, and what I mean by that is our editorial team is constantly seeking out cool tools, public domain data sets from government agencies and labs, and other educational resources that could be used to help students do hands-on science projects if only students and teachers were aware of them and knew how to use them. Databases, for example, of animal migration data that have been collected by wildlife biologists all around the world, genetic data, satellite images, weather data from remote sensors in oceans, tools for genetic analysis, gadgets like the Pico board or an infrared thermometer, and tools for helping students explore video and game design. Some excellent work has been done by organizations like MIT and Carnegie Mellon to introduce students to computer programming in a fun and accessible way. One of our newest guides that I'd like to talk about today and introduce is our guide to kid-friendly programming languages. This guide gives teachers and parents and even students an overview of some of the coolest tools out there today to teach students in a friendly way how to get started with programming, software, and even video games. One of the programs that we talk about is Game Maker. That's one of the newest ones. And one of our new guides that we're introducing today is the Game Maker user guide, which I'll show you too. Game Maker, which is has been developed by a company called Yo-Yo Games, is very user-friendly programming environment that anyone from, say, middle school on up can use to design computer games. A link to the free light version of Game Maker is located in this tutorial, and anyone can download that and get started. No previous programming experience is needed to use Game Maker, and our guide to Game Maker, which we're looking at right now, tells you everything you need to know to get about what it is and how to use it. We've also provided a link to Activate, which is a free website and curriculum to help students learn how to make fun games that address today's big problems, societal problems. Many of the project ideas that we're going to be rolling out this fall feature Game Maker. An example of a project idea that we've already released, one of our newest project ideas, is called GoFish, creating an ocean-friendly fishing video game. I'm going to find that really quick, which is right here. Give you a little tour. This is a project idea that uses Game Maker, and the objective of it is to have kids learn about not only video game design, but at the same time they're learning about the consequences of overfishing. So you can see some in the terms and concepts. They're learning about things like habitat damage, bottom trawl, predatory, etc. So that's a great new one that we're happy to introduce today. Another great project in our video and computer games collection is Want to Make a Video Game. I'll find that. One second. Here's how. This is a project idea that makes use of another kid-friendly programming resource called Scratch. We have a user guide on Scratch. Scratch was developed at MIT, and it's a tool that helps students learn programming while they're doing fun things to create their own video games. It's also free to download, and a link to the program is located in this Scratch tutorial. Last but not least, I will show you another. There's dozens of project ideas in this area, and I'm only showing you 3, but I think you'll get a sense for what we have to offer. There's one more I want to show you, which is called Storytelling Alice, Once Upon a Time in a Computer-Generated Land. For students who are interested in creating computer animations and animated storylines, we have this project idea, and it makes use of the excellent 3D computer programming environment called Storytelling Alice. This was developed at Carnegie Mellon, and like Game Maker and Scratch, Storytelling Alice is free, and a link to download the program can be found in our tutorial, which is called How to Get Started Downloading and Using Storytelling Alice, which is right here. Besides the new Game Maker guide and the guide to kid-friendly programming languages, we also have a couple of other new guides that I want to mention. One is called Tips and Resources for Making Video and Computer Games. This guide gives students with information about choosing a video or computer game topic for a science project. There's a collection of helpful tips and links that illustrate how students can incorporate a video and computer game into a science project, and how they can create well-designed games and where they can publish their games once they've created them. We anticipate that this resource will be very useful for students who like the idea of choosing a game-based science project, but they aren't sure where to start. Another new resource that I want to mention is called Resources for STEM Education Through Video Game and Animation Creation. This guide is meant more for an audience of teachers and parents. We know that some teachers and parents may be a little bit more, they may be a little naturally skeptical about the value of video games in scientific or engineering learning, but this page shows how science projects using video or computer game design meet different state and federal STEM education standards, and we provide a whole host of links and other resources to support a teacher or a parent who wants to help his or her student with a game design project but isn't sure how to do so. We also provide links to the software mentioned in our project ideas, and again, many of those are free. Before the end of the year, we're going to be introducing 4 new game design related project ideas and 2 updated career profiles. We're going to be doing a special issue of our newsletter, which is devoted to the video and computer games project ideas interest area. And that will be sponsored by AMD, thank you very much, and it will be basically a recap of all the great new video and computer game content that we've added to the site since August. And that newsletter will be in December. I'll show you later where to sign up for the newsletter if you haven't already done so. All right, with that we're going to move on to a new resource, another one I want to cover today, which is the Science Careers resource. We have, over the last couple of years, our staff scientists have been building a library of career profiles. These are articles that encourage students who've enjoyed a project to consider pursuing a career in that field of science or engineering. Each of these articles details the job duties, education requirements, and salary information that are associated with that career. Students can access these career profiles either from the Science Careers tab across the top of our site or from the bottom of any project idea that is interesting to them. Here at Science Buddies, we think that sometimes the media focuses a little bit too much on STEM careers that require extraordinary levels of training and education, like astronauts or brain surgeons. And we've really made a conscious effort to include a large variety of STEM careers, not just those that require a PhD, but also some, that like a patent lawyer, which are not even really a science profession per se, but which require a great deal of STEM literacy to do well. And furthermore, we have plenty of science careers profiled where they may not even require a 4-year degree, like, for example, biological technician requires an associate's degree, and I'll walk you through what a career profile looks like. So the typical career profile starts with some colorful pictures up at the top where we give students a background on what does that person actually do, followed by a summary section where we go over the key requirements, educational and otherwise, to do that job, the subjects that the student will need to study in high school to be able to attain that type of job, some information about the median salary for the job, projected job growth for that career. Oftentimes we will have interviews available with real people who have done that job, and those interviews could take either a written form, a video form, or an audio form on the site. We'll also give a list of related occupations. I hope you can explore the career library a little bit more detail than I can go through right now. After the summary, there's quite a bit more detail that's added for students who want to understand in greater depth what those people do, who hires them, and where they can find out more. I want to show you one other career that's relevant to our discussion today, and that is computer programmer. Since we spend a lot of time talking about the video and computer games interest area, we have this career profile for computer programmer, which on all of the project ideas that I showed you earlier would have been listed at the bottom as a related career. This one does not. This one does require a bachelor's degree. So that's a quick overview of our careers. Next, we're going to talk about our project guide. The project guide, as you can see, has 3 main sections. I'm going to go through them one at a time. The first, how to do a science fair project, is a step-by-step guide to doing a science fair project or a science experiment from beginning to end. The articles in each section explain key concepts at the top in language that students as well as teachers and parents who may lack a strong foundation in science can understand. By explaining each step of the process, the project guide can help students create their own unique science project even if they haven't based it on one of our project ideas. Advanced topics like writing an abstract are also included, in addition to more basic topics like formulating a question. In I think in every single one of these steps, for example, we'll look at variables, we give examples that students can look at. Here's a list of examples for variables. We also have, and this is a teacher favorite we've heard time and again, a checklist at the bottom of each step in the project guide that helps students, before they turn something in, do a sanity check on the work they just did to make sure they understood their assignment. Let me go back to the main page for the project guide. We used to have a chapter in our How to Do a Science Fair project guide about engineering projects and how they differ from science experiments. I'm happy to say that this spring we introduced our new engineering design project guide, which is specifically designed to take students step by step through the process of creating an engineering project. This was something that I think was long overdue, and I'm very happy that they have their own project guide now. As you teachers probably already know, science experiments are a little bit different than engineering projects, and they can certainly use some good guidance for doing engineering projects. Engineers are creating new things like products or websites, environments or experiences, whereas scientists are studying how nature works. If a student is not sure if their project is more of a science experiment or if it's better characterized as an engineering project, they can access and look at this Comparing the Engineering Design Process and the Scientific Method article that we have, where we go over what the differences are. This is probably helpful not only to students but also to even judges in a science fair setting, in addition to parents and teachers. There's one that I want to show you in particular. I'm just going to use our site search really quick to find Customize Your Own Drum Set. This is a project idea that is an engineering project, and I wanted to point out it also uses a Pico board and Scratch, which I had mentioned earlier. This helps students design their own drum set. There's a picture of a YouTube video that gives a good illustration of what the student is going to try to attempt to do. The thing I wanted to point out is that in many of our engineering project ideas, there will be a link to the engineering design project guide in the experimental procedure section so that students can refresh their memory on what exactly the engineering process is and how to do the steps properly. Okay, back to the project guide main tab so I can show you the third major resource that we have here. These are our tools, techniques, and reference information. We take safety very seriously, and this part of our project guide tab has quite a number of safety-related guides for everything from chemistry safety to general safety to even internet safety. There are also guides for scientific review committee guidelines, competitions, and then guides that relate specifically to different fields of science and engineering, like in the aerodynamics area, we have instructions for building your own wind tunnel. There's definitely a teacher favorite, which is in the plant biology section, measuring plant growth. A popular topic in science fairs is comparing how different plants grow under different scenarios, and this one gives them some concrete ways to scientifically measure the plant growth. Let's see, anything else I wanted to highlight on this? I think the idea behind these tools is that they allow teachers a greater ability to help students who are working on projects outside their immediate subject area. And of course they're obviously available to the students too, and most of the project ideas link to one or another of these guides where they're relevant. At the bottom of the project guide tab on the left, we have our advanced project guide. That's worth a mention as well. The resources in this section are designed specifically to help students who are preparing to compete at a high level, such as the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, the Intel Science Talent Search, the Junior Science and Humanities Symposium, the Siemens Competition in Math, Science, and Technology, or other high-level science competitions. The guides include working with ISEF, which is the International Science and Engineering Fair rules, tips on finding a mentor. There's a link to a special advice forum that we have where students can ask questions as they prepare for their major competition. There's tips on advanced display board design and construction tips. And finally, there's blogs and memoirs from real students who competed at top fairs sharing their advice and enthusiasm for those experiences. Okay, that's the project guide. We go back up to the top. And our next major resource that we're going to visit is our Ask an Expert advice forum. Ask an Expert is an online advice forum where students can get help on their science fair project. They get individual support from our volunteers. Every year we have anywhere from, say, 75 or around 75 volunteers who come from academia. We've got grad students, professors, industry. We have working scientists and engineers, some retirees who help us out as well, and then some top high school students who participate as mentors, as peer mentors in a community service capacity. This is a safe forum where kids can find answers to those tough questions that may go beyond their parents' expertise or their teachers' expertise. All of our adult volunteers go through background checks and training, and the forums are public. We don't allow private communication such as through email or chat between our volunteers and the students. Students can ask questions throughout the entire project, or they can just come in once and ask, one question about a specific problem. The forums, as you can see, are arranged first by grade level to offer grade and age-appropriate support for students, and then within a grade level by topic, so by major area of science. We'll take a look at one question and answer thread. Let me look down here. I wanted to find one on artificial photosynthesis. I think I lost my place. I think that was in the life science forum. There it is. This is a post. I'll just show you one. I mean, you're welcome to go in here and browse whenever you want and see that the sorts of questions, they range from, unfortunately, the infamous, what should I do my project on? In which case, hopefully, our experts are directing the student back to the topic selection wizard, to pretty thoughtful questions, like this young person who has an idea for doing a project on artificial photosynthesis and has asked for help to evaluate some articles about artificial photosynthesis and some tips on whether or not her idea can be done without a lab and not at the nanoscale. In the case of this student, they were lucky enough to get responses from not only one of our high school mentors, but also a couple of our trusted advisors. and then they exchanged several messages. So oftentimes it's not a single exchange. Sometimes these posts can develop into an ongoing mentoring relationship that continues throughout the science fair season. I've got some good news for teachers today, which is that this year, new in our advice forum is a teacher advice forum that's specifically devoted to teachers who are organizing a science fair, perhaps their first science fair. Those would probably be the most logical ones to have questions, but even veterans can come in here and share best practices and ask questions as well. It's brand new. We only just started it a few days ago, so there's not many posts yet, but I encourage anyone who's in the position of doing their first science fair to go ahead and make some posts and ask some questions, and we'll get you some help. With that, I will move on to one last thing I want to mention about Ask an Expert. If any of you out there are high school teachers and you've got some very clever college-bound students who are looking for a volunteer opportunity, please encourage them to look at Science Buddy's Ask an Expert volunteer service as a possibility for them. On the volunteer page, which you can find, I'll point that out later, there's a flyer that can be downloaded and passed out, or they can look at that. All right, back to the main homepage and our next major resource that we're going to cover, which is our teacher resources, the green tab. This is chock full of great tools and resources for teachers, and I wish I had an unlimited amount of time to go over it, but I don't, so I'm going to give you the highlights. I think the two main divisions that you need to understand are, number one, we have resources that have to do with the science project itself, so guiding students in doing a hands-on project. And then number two, resources that relate to putting on a science fair. Having students do science projects does not necessarily have to lead to a competitive science fair. And this guide here, the Teacher's Guide to Science Projects, which I'll open, shows you how to connect an inquiry-based program to educational standards, allowing you and your students to get the most out of science projects and not necessarily ending with a science fair. In fact, in this guide, we give you an alternative to a science fair, which is a science expo, and we give a step-by-step guide to planning that. It also includes, towards the end, a letter to parents, and it also includes printable copies of the various steps of doing a science fair project. Close that and scroll down to project guide, printable handouts, and worksheets. So all of those step-by-step the various steps of doing a science fair project that I covered earlier in the project guide, here as teachers you can find printable versions of those steps that are great for handing out. Back up to the top, I wanted to mention our enrichment tools. This is a collection of other sort of best practices, ideas that have been contributed and developed over the years on teacher suggestions, like how to put on a family science night, or how to do a peer review or a project clinic. Those are good things to check out when you have time. And let's see, scroll back up here and mention another teacher favorite, which is our grading rubrics. We have a number of teacher-vetted grading rubrics to help you ensure that all the projects that the students are turning in are graded equally and fairly. The printable rubrics cover every step of the science project, including the question, the bibliography, all the way down to the display board. Okay, I'm going to go back and cover now the science fair resources. These are resources that are specifically designed for helping a student or, a teacher or another adult put on a science fair. If you're in charge of planning a science fair at your school, or you're interested in starting one, the first thing you want to look at is the Guide to Planning a Science Fair. This is a PDF guide that literally tells you everything you need to know about doing a science fair project. Running a science fair. Probably can't read the table of contents very well in this resolution, but do look at it. It tells you everything from a detailed timeline to plan, to how to set up the room on the day of the fair and how to return the room to normal. It's got templates for thank you notes, judging rubrics, certificate templates, basically anything you could need. And we would love your feedback on it. If you use it and you have suggestions that you think will make it easier for other teachers, please let us know. I think probably the schedule worksheet is one of the best tools to get started with. We also have, I think I mentioned the certificate. There's even a certificate that you can print out to give to the students. So take a look at that Guide to Planning a Science Fair. Let us know what you think. We encourage you to download our materials and distribute them to your students, parents, and anyone else involved with your science fair or your science project unit. If you download our content, would you please take a minute and send us an email at scibuddy@sciencebuddies.org and tell us your name, what resources you used, and give us some feedback about our materials. We encourage you to tell your colleagues about the resources, but we do request that they download the materials themselves. Okay, next we have our parents resource. I'll just briefly go over this because I do want to make sure that we have time at the end to answer a few questions. Our parents tab has an article, some articles about why science fairs or science projects are important. What is the value of a science fair project? There's an essay that can be printed and sent out to parents or even shared with the students in your class. One of our teacher favorites in the parents section is the How to Help with Your Child's Science Project, which has a chart of appropriate parental involvement, which helps parents understand what is helping at the right level and what is going too far. In addition to that, we have some of our newer resources include a summer science camp resource, a Science at Home resource, which basically is an index that has pulled together some of the project ideas on our site that are easy to do with materials that you probably have around the house already or can get at your nearest grocery store. Perfect for doing on a rainy Saturday with your kids or maybe over the summer when they're bored. We also have an index of project ideas that are appropriate for earning scouting badges for Girl or Boy Scouts or 4-H. All right, on to our My Science Buddies tab. This tab is sort of like a My Account page, and what you would use this for, or what your students would use this for, is this is where the topic selection wizard recommendations and project ideas that you marked as favorites would be stored. I'm going to quickly log in and you will see my recommendations. Hopefully I'll type my password correctly. Ta-da! Okay, so in my upper corner here we can see what my favorites are. These are the ones this is the one that I marked as a favorite earlier in the webinar. We can also see what the topic selection wizard recommended to me. So we didn't lose that information when we navigated away from the topic selection wizard recommendations page earlier. It's all stored there. We also have in this area of the site our community participation area where you can track how you have helped Science Buddies. This is a very new feature. We wanted to give a formal way for our audience to tell us what they liked or didn't like about a resource or what didn't work with a project idea, how we could make it better or more clear. So for example, you can click on I did this project and you can give us feedback on a project idea that that you did. A student may be looking for some community, or any volunteer who's looking for some community service hours or an easy, no strings attached volunteer opportunity could test out one of our new project ideas and tell us how it went in the test drive. You'll basically at this My Science Buddies area will track your participation and tell you how many points you've earned. With the help of feedback from students, parents, and teachers and others who use our website, we can make our materials better. for everyone. So if you get involved, I want to thank you in advance. All right, how do you stay connected with Science Buddies? Well, you can sign up for our free newsletter. I'm going to log out now and actually show you how to sign up for a Science Buddies account. You can click on the Join Science Buddies Now button. It's at the bottom of every page, and it's also on the My Science Buddies page. If you're a teacher, there's a special registration that you click on right here, and this will give you the opportunity to say if you would like our newsletter or not. So please do sign up for the newsletter. It's a great way to keep in touch with what is the newest content on our site, the newest project ideas, the newest guides, and the newest tips or resources for the science fair season. We also have a blog, and the blog helps connect what's happening in the science news to the content on our site. So if something has come out, if a new movie comes out, it's really popular, it's like the movie Up was about the helium balloons, maybe we can point to a project idea on our site that talks about helium, or if there's a natural disaster, we might have a project idea that helps students understand something about the geology involved. But the blog helps you stay connected to Science Buddies and what's new, and also highlights anything relevant in the news. Of course, we also have a Facebook page, and you can follow us on Twitter. So that's, I think, really the end of the formal tour. I did want to cover one more feature, which is our site search right here in the upper right-hand corner of any tab. There is a site search, which if I've gone too fast, and some people tell me that I do give this tour like it's like drinking from a fire hose, so I apologize if I went too fast, but I had a lot to cover in the time allotted. But if you say you wanted to know, well, where was that information about tracking wild wolves? Well, you just type wolves, and sure enough, you'll get the Where Do the Wild Wolves Wander, which is a project idea that helps students use the data sets that I mentioned that were collected by wildlife biologists around the world. Or maybe you want to know, so you want to look specifically for project ideas that relate to Game Maker. So you can type Game Maker and project ideas, and this will bring up GoFish, which we covered earlier as well. So if there's anything that I've said that you can't remember exactly what it was and you wanted to refresh your memory and you can't find it, try the site search. It's a great tool. Okay, so I think at this point we have a little bit of time left for some questions and answers. I do also want to mention that we have a few new resources that we are hoping to introduce within the next year if we get funding. We are very optimistic and hopeful that some of the proposals we have out there to foundations and corporations will help us build two new interest areas, one for nanotechnology and one for robotics. We would also like to release a K-5 level, K-5 version of our topic selection wizard, where the questions and the usage is made more appropriate for younger students. It's certainly fine for them to use it now, but we know that we could probably make it even better and easier to use for the youngest students if we were to adjust some of the questions. Okay, question and answer time. Hopefully some of you have been typing in questions as we go along. I've got my colleagues here who are going to give me some good questions. I think I'll start. Oh, here's a good one. Someone asks, are these projects accessible to inner city students? As long as a student has access to a computer, they can utilize all of the resources on Science Buddies. Many of our project ideas do not require costly materials, and our new classroom activities can provide the benefits of hands-on science projects without requiring work from home or extra assistance from parents. I actually think I didn't mention the classroom activities. One of the initiatives that we're in the midst of doing is taking some of our project ideas that would lend themselves well to a classroom demonstration and creating versions of them that would guide a teacher in presenting those projects as a classroom activity as opposed to a science fair project. We're also hoping that if we can get funding for it, we can do a new version, an upgraded version of our search tool, which will allow you to search using cost as a filter. Let's see, ideas for engineering projects. Someone in Los Angeles asks if we could give them ideas for engineering projects. It's a good excuse to go back to our project ideas tab and scroll down to our listing of interest areas. We have quite a few that are engineering related. Civil engineering, computer science, electricity and electronics, energy and power, environmental engineering, materials science, mechanical engineering, and then of course video and computer games, which I've already talked about, and photography and digital photography, which has some engineering elements to it as well. So whoever asked that question, go and explore and browse some of the great project ideas we have across those areas. Here's another good question. I have this has come from numerous people. I have my students complete the topic selection wizard in school. If you're in a computer lab, how can they save their project recommendations to later access them at home? That's a good question. It comes back to this My Science Buddies tab where your students need to join Science Buddies. All they need to do is give their username and email address, and then they'll be able to log in later to that My Science Buddies page and find their topic selection wizard recommendations and their favorites. Here's another common question. What does Science Buddies do to discourage plagiarism? That's a great question. We offer a number of resources on the site that help define and discuss plagiarism, and we encourage teachers to use those resources to begin, first of all, a classroom conversation about plagiarism prior to the beginning of the science fair season. Those can be found in the project guide, in the writing a research paper, writing a research paper. We definitely talk about plagiarism in this resource. We also have on the Parents tab some information about explaining plagiarism. And in our Teacher's Guide, there's also the Teacher's Guide to Science Projects, and Step 7, there's also a discussion of plagiarism. And of course, we encourage teachers to be as clever as their students by doing things like typing in some of the sentences that the student has submitted into Google and seeing what comes up. Ultimately, it's up to the teacher to set those expectations and enforce the policy, but we do what we can to help. I think I've really got to wrap it up. There were a couple of other questions I wasn't able to get to. If you're in that boat and we weren't able to answer your question, please write to us at scibuddy@sciencebuddies.org. I want to say thank you again to everyone for attending, and thank you to all of our sponsors and donors who make it possible for Science Buddies to be free for all the teachers and students out there. Thank you once again to AMD Foundation's Changing the Game for helping us put on this webinar and for supporting our popular video and computer games interest area. Thanks again to Citrix and to Western Digital. This is now the end of the webinar. As you exit the webinar, a short survey is going to pop up on your screen. Please fill that out to qualify for our random drawing of 3 external hard drives. Again, thank you, and that's all she wrote.
The organizer